Hello, I'm Jeremy, and we are going to continue on with looking at Jordan Peterson's book, 12 Rules to Life, and how we can implement this into our lives. So I've already done two parts. This is part three. There was an overture and then a little bit about what I have done. And now we're going to get into it. So in the description down below, I have a link to an audiobook version of this where he reads those chapters and he divides the chapters up into segments. I'll put the very first one for chapter 1, and it'll be 1.1, and then it'll be 2, 3, 4. And so you can look at the rest of them yourself, but I'm only going to put the first one on there. And it's one of the things that I've noticed while going over his book is that he likes to put his politics into it and his political views, and it's understandable. I mean, that's what he's interested in. So I'm not going to go over every single little minute thing. I'm going to focus on the things that pertain to me and what it is that I'm doing. You're going to have to kind of go through it to see if there was something that was missed that would pertain to you, which there probably is. So, for example, there's quite a bit of talk about bullying in it. Growing up, I was called a bully, so I understand it, but I don't know how much it really kind of resonates with me on how to deal with bullying, because I don't have a problem standing up for myself. So if you like and enjoy all this and you're looking to improve yourself and you're tired, done with procrastinating, give a thumbs up and join me in this. Subscribe. And if I produce quite a bit of material, depending on whenever you view this, go to my Patreon or Subscribe Star. Think about becoming a member, because I want to put this all on a website where it's a hell of a lot better than what I'm doing here. But it's, as you see, whenever we get into this, I can't do all this. It's way too much. And so everybody can contribute in some way, and they should. I'm tired of power being held by just a small amount of people. And you hear it all the time. Well, why aren't you doing more? Why aren't you doing this? People, for example, with Tim Pool, they tell him, why aren't you doing more? It's like, because there's only so much that you can do. It doesn't matter who you are. You only have 24 hours in a day. So anyways, he does a pretty good job of dividing it all up. And he starts off reading it in order. And Peterson starts off with talking about lobsters. And if you know anything about Peterson, it's kind of a meme with him and lobsters. And from what I understand, the reason why he really kind of goes into this is that humans and lobsters share the same neurochemistry inside of their brains. And we have serotonin levels, and we both react to antidepressants, in that it cheers us up and gets us kind of going again and adventurous with life. And he's stressing this to show that in lobsters, they're old and they've been around for eons, and that this is something that we too have managed to retain, that we haven't lost this attribute for whatever reasons. We still have it. So if we still have it, then why? And should we ignore it, embrace it? And he's making the case to embrace it. And so I'm going to go ahead and accept that. I don't have the website that I want to build is supposed to be based off of truth and evidence. And I think what we're really going to see is that we don't know nearly as much as we think that we do. So this isn't going to be people who are extremely set in their ways. It's like, screw you. I don't care what your ways are. I want to know what the best is. And right now, the best person that I know kind of for psychology is Jordan Peterson. What he's been saying and doing really resonates with me. And so I'm going to accept this. Whether if you want to or not, that's something that you're going to have to come to your own conclusions with. It'll be easier whenever the site comes up. And it's because people are really going to be able to get engaged by posing their questions and upvoting and downvoting and so on and so forth. And He talks about serotonin levels, both in lobsters and people, and whenever you go out and you engage in the world and you do things and you have goals and you accomplish these things, and even not even, you don't even have to accomplish the goal, just doing it makes you feel good, better. And it's the same thing. I've heard this with running too. I run, I exercise. At one point, I was up to 26 miles until I had a little runner's knee issue. And you get kind of in this runner's high because it releases dopamine and you're really kind of lost in your head, sorting things out, clears your mind up. It's real nice. And I think in a practical way, the way that you can really help with this is to set goals. Lots of them, but small and not necessarily big. Maybe having some long-term goals for 3 to 5 years, but your daily life should be a bunch of small ones. I say this because, as I've mentioned before, is that I've had 50 pounds shedded off of me, and I divided that up into a bunch of small little goals. And so for every 2 weeks, I would focus on 2 things. And then the next 2 weeks, it would be 2 other things. And I kept adding to it. And Peterson talks about this quite a lot, that if you just will make changes, even small ones, then there's a compounding effect with that. And so if you keep doing that, after weeks, months, years, that you won't recognize yourself. And I'm going to say that I agree with this. One of the things that happened was that I had done so many of these small little goals that I had set for myself. I started thinking about how I could not stop because I did not want to start over. I did not want to lose my progress. I had done too much and gone too far that going back was no longer an option. And also to help with that, one of the things that I did was I started throwing away my clothes that were too big for me. So for example, one of the biggest size jeans that I had bought, I only bought one, but it was a size 44 waist. Now I'm down to a 34. And if those start to get too tight, I'm using that as a tool to say, yeah, don't go buy bigger clothes. Stop packing your face full of food. So I think too many people are also caught up with living online and through the internet and watching a bunch of nonsense. I really like politics and what's going on with the news, but it's so much of the ridiculous repeated arguments that have been said time and time again. So you can go over to my other channel. Well, it depends on what platform you're on. Freedom of Expression, though, on YouTube. On YouTube, the other channel is called Freedom of Expression, and I talk about this. There was one video that I put up talking about the minimum wage, and Thomas Sowell, Milton Friedman, and Walter, I forget his full name, but they're all talking about it. They're older gentlemen. Milton Friedman has passed away. Thomas Sowell, he is, I believe, 90 as of right now. And they're talking about the minimum wage and how it's no good, dating back to whenever it started. And Milton Friedman's the oldest. He's the first one of the three to die, and he mentored Thomas Sowell. And that he's talking about minimum wage whenever at $2.50. I found that as I look into this, that one side, nothing changes with their talking points. They're all exactly the same. But the other side continues to grow. And it's because this side has evidence to support it. At this point in time, the minimum wage thing, it's not a discussion. The facts are in. The information has been gathered. Unless if you have something new, then it's closed until then. And that's something my side is going to deal with. What a waste of time. I hate hearing about it. It's the same drivel as before. And so much of this happens time and time again. I don't want to be caught in a loop, and I want to be productive with my life. This all started because I wanted to fix the things that were going on in my life, and I found out that I could monetize it And I enjoy this much more. And so just with creating YouTube videos, I've learned a lot in doing this, and it's much better to just do it instead of watching stupid videos. Because also, you know, you watch all the funny little videos that they have too, and you get distracted. And the next thing you know, you have done nothing. Are you satisfied with your life? Should you be doing more? And the answer probably is yes, because I hear this nonsense all the time too, is that, well, I am there for my children, and if they have any kind of problems, they can always come talk to me. And my answer to that is bullshit. You know what? If you have a little baby and you tell them that they're just going to poop their diapers and they're not going to do anything, they don't know that pooping in their diapers is wrong and that they shouldn't be doing that. And that it's the parents that have to tell them as they get older, you know, you need to be potty trained and go do it for yourself. It's the parents who have to tell them that. It's the same thing. Just because they've gotten older and they've taken some classes or they've learned some words and they can speak, that doesn't mean that they just know everything. The right answer is, come here, child, sit down and tell me about your day, have something to eat, we'll have a nice time and we'll eat as we go about our day. And so, are you living up to your potential? Chances are probably not, and you can have your parents to thank for that. But instead of just moping about this, how about being proactive and doing something about it? And so do this. Set up a bunch of little goals. You don't have to completely change your life and address every single thing. Start with one thing. For me, it was my weight loss, and it went to other things. And this is something that Peterson talks about. He's a clinical psychologist. He's got his PhD, and he's been in doing clinical work or psychology work, more appropriately, for like 30, 40 years, because he's in his 60s, I believe, now. Okay, so what else? One of the things that has come to my attention is that there's this circadian rhythms, and that we have kind of a cycle of when we should eat and sleep and all this. I'm not going to go into it any more than that, because I think that deserves a complete video all in of itself. But that people who do not kind of follow into the circadian rhythms and they stay up late at night, so they know that people who work night shifts supposedly have a smaller lifespan, because all of this is kind of out of whack, and that it's good to take like a little nap of some kind about midday, and that there are other animals that also kind of do this. So there's different kind of metrics of support that we see in nature and also from what studies show us. So, but it's something that I want to put on your radar. So if you're wanting to look into something a little bit more, that would be a good place to start. He also advises on with his clinical work, whenever he's counseling someone, to start off your meals or your day eating a meal high in fat and protein and not sugar and carbs, because that'll give you an insulin spike and it has other effects. I'm always kind of suspicious about that. I think that your diet is an extremely volatile thing. I listen to this one doctor from time to time, Dr. Rhonda Patrick, who talks a lot about the gut biome, and that there's thousands of microorganisms that live inside of your gut. And feeding them and taking care of them is something that we have just kind of recently learned about. It's not been very long at all. And it's just another wrench in the system. So just anytime, anywhere you hear anything about diet and nutrition, I would advise just to take it with a grain of salt. So just my 2 cents on all of that. I'm also not going to go over every last bit of any of these chapters, because there's this guy, Ty Lopez. He talked about how he reads like hundreds of books a month, or maybe hundreds of books a year, a lot. I found another video where he actually explained it, and he said because he doesn't read it word for word verbatim, he skims over them to get the gist of it. And it's like, yeah, he doesn't get 100% out of it, but he gets about 75, 80%. It's like, okay, well, he could take a week to read one book and really indulge himself in it, or he can use that same week and he can do like 2 books a day because he's skimming through it. Which method do you think that he's going to get more information out of? Well, obviously, hands down, if he's doing 1 or 2 books a day by skimming over them real quickly. And so that's why I'm skimming over this stuff too, is because I'm taking the stuff that's pertinent to me, which is why I advise you to read or to listen to the book and take from it what would work best for you. He also talks a lot, and he begins here about anxiety and fear, and that it is a huge hindrance that people have. And he talks about bullying in this chapter, and that to address this is one of the things is, as the title says, stand up straight with your shoulders back and to go out and to engage that fear, that there's a different kind of chemical reaction that happens inside of you whenever you go out and you engage the world voluntarily versus it being kind of forced down your throat. That things work out a lot better for you whenever you make the decision to do it. And again, he doesn't say that you need to go out and do it all. He gives the example of an elevator, and I've told this story before too. So that it probably will start off just by looking at an elevator, and then you come back later and you take a few steps closer, and you come back again and you get closer and closer, and then you touch it, and then you open the door, and then next time you get in, and next time you might go up and down it a little bit, and then they find out that they're not really a lot more courageous with the elevator, but they still kind of fear it a little bit. But what they find out is that they are the ones who are actually braver than what they realize. And then that has a cascading effect into other aspects of their life. And he's talked about how he's done this with people where they've overcome some fear with this issue, and then the next thing they know, they're having this argument with their spouse that they should have had a long time ago. It's like, well, yeah, that's kind of seems to follow. You've learned a skill, and that is to deal with your fear and your anxiety. This is a problem that we're experiencing with the wokeness that's going on, that they live these extremely sheltered lives, and I do not agree with it at all. There's a counter movement, especially with children, to not be helicopter parents, but instead to there's a book called Free Range Children, which is where you let your children go out and do whatever. And that's how it was whenever I was young. I could ride my bike all over town and it didn't matter. And we did, and our skateboards and everything else. And that's the way it was for everyone beforehand. I mean, especially whenever you get to a point where there wasn't electricity and you didn't have cars and books and magazines and all this other stuff and video games and TV shows and movies. What did you do? You had no choice but to go out and to engage with everyone. And there's a lot for children to learn from adults. And the numbers are in saying that children were never at any kind of risk of being abducted. It happened rarely, but most of the time whenever they talk about it, it's another play on words because we live in clown world, and that the majority of children that are abducted, it's by family members, and that it will happen a lot whenever parents are going through a custody battle. And one of the parents does not like the ruling of the courts. And they're like, well, this is my child. Who's the court to tell me otherwise? I am taking my kid. And technically speaking, that would be abduction, but that's what the majority of them are. It's nonsense. So it's always, whenever you hear anything, to challenge it. And that's what makes it difficult, because on the surface level, it sounds like this is a real concern. But whenever you dig into it, it's like, no, it's a parent who wants their damn child. So it just instantly becomes more complicated. So, but he's talking about all this and that it's a compounding effect, and that he gives an example of a woman going to a mall and she has heart palpitations, and that it can lead to other things. It's like, well, now she has problems going to the mall, and then she has problems going to the market, she has problems going to the store, and then even her house, and so on and so forth. And that it is to really, I think that the key takeaway is to be progressive with this, be proactive, and just to deal with this. You're going to suffer from losses. Life just sucks. Accept it and deal with it, and don't give a damn what anybody has to say. And that there will be people that, even whenever you're doing good, that they're going to put you down. And you know what? Those people do not need to be your friends. And just because they happen to be your friends at the moment, or even family members, just because someone has a child, that doesn't make them an automatic saint. There are plenty of parents out there who are just trash. So you're going to have to dig down deep and ask yourself, are these really good people? Are they really helping me? Are they making me a better person or a worse person? And it's difficult, but that may be what you have to do. I've had to do that. Yeah, it's true. Because nobody's going to take care of you other than you. I can't. I don't know you. And the chances that I'm ever going to know you, slim to none. I wouldn't bet on it. And he talks about being honest about your situation. That whenever you realize something, talk about it. There might be some actions that you need to do in order to help fix all this stuff. I think being truthful and honest is extremely important. I think it's underrated. I don't think that we stress this enough. It's also one of the things that I'm doing with this website is that I'm tired of all the lies and nonsense. And so this website that I'm going to build, I'll tell you what, I'm going to knock this out of the damn park. He also talks about how being angry is a good thing, but with control. It's like, yes, I have found that being angry is definitely good, but also having control over it. That if somebody wants to push me, it's like, you might want to think twice. I am more than perfectly reasonable to be able to sit down and to talk to you and to work things out. But if you don't want to, then my first inkling is that if I can walk away, I am. Because I'm tired of wasting my time with worthless people. And I've got better things to do than that trash. So, and then he talks about hyper-sheltered families and that they kind of create these little fantasy perfect worlds within their home, and it's like that is not reality at all. And then these kids get let out and they don't know how to handle a thing and they just fall apart. And it's like, yes, why would you do that? And that from his work and his education and experiences, that it is much better to push your kids to do more. I mean, if for anything, you're not guaranteed to be alive tomorrow. Numerous things can happen, and then it's just done and over with. And then what? Well, what happens to your kids then? So I completely agree. So, and then he talks about too, with other things, about what you do matters. And that if you're going to do something, do the best that you possibly can. Because why do it just half-heartedly? Not to do necessarily every single little minute thing that you can, but do the best that you can within reason. Why would you not otherwise? And so, yes, do the best you can and do all that you can, which includes, yes, stand up straight with your head up high. Part of what we do is that we have nonverbal communication. And so if you're looking to make things better for yourself, there's no better place to start than with you. You don't have any control over me. You're not going to tell me what to say or do, but you can do that with you. I'm doing that with me. And so, yes, I want to increase my chances as much as possible for success. And so that means things like I'm going to watch my diet and exercise, because people like seeing other people who are well put together, that they didn't look like that they just woke up and rolled out of a gutter, that they've got it together. And you know exactly what I mean, because if you had picture the 5 most important people in your life and say they all had to go in to see the doctor for whatever, would you want a doctor who looked like that they had not showered in a month, they smelled horrible, they had alcohol in their breath, they had a bunch of needle pokes in their arms, they were high, their eyes were glazed over? Would you feel comfortable with that? And the answer is obviously hell no. You would tell your friends and family, we're out of here. Why would you expect that from others and not from yourself? That's the hypocrisy with that trash. It's like, no, you can get yourself together. You can set your own terms for it, because you know what? The way that we expect a doctor to react and to present themselves is different than a cop, a lawyer, a plumber, an electrician, whatever. But if you're going to do it, then do it. And don't worry about being perfect. Do the best within your own standards that you have. And you have different standards. You have a professional standard, you have a personal standard, and we know this because the way that you're going to act around a judge is going to be different than a doctor, than your parents, than a preacher, than your spouse, than your children. I mean, there should definitely be different things that you're doing with your spouse that you would never do with your children, or at least I hope so. So hopefully this is obvious to you. So that is good enough for chapter 1, and I will be getting with you here in a few days for chapter 2. And so we will see you then. Goodbye.